Benson is a health and fitness professional. He's a sports science graduate for 12 years with a coaching experience. Apart from all that, he's a very gentle soul who is very good with elderly people. I mean, you know, if I were to, you know, have half his patience, I think I'll be a much better person. And he basically, in 2018, he founded Virgio Health. I mean, he's worked with quite a number of my patients who and family members who are elderly and rather stubborn. But he has a knack of trying to get them to improve their body mechanics. And you know, I will hand over the podium to him. And thanks, Benson. I'm going to stop my video and let you share.
Thank you very much, Dr. C. Let me share my slides. Okay, that was a good amount of information that Dr. C has given us, and I do believe that in order for us to get fit, we need to do exercise. But a lot of times, we need to be able to be fit so that we can do exercise so that we can be fit, which simply means that a lot of times the ability for us to perform certain function, it is important for us to make sure that we can do the amount of daily activities that we are doing on the daily basis, such as walking, which is important as what Dr. C has mentioned to improve the quality of life. Now, today we're going to just talk about how we can use functional training to prevent falls. Okay, so we're first going to understand how do we fall. Very simple mechanics understanding of the human body is every one of us, we have what we call a center of mass, where the center of gravity is passing through the body into what we call a base of support, which is the surface area below the floor where we can balance ourselves. Now, if our center of mass is above the base of support, means that you are balanced. And if your center of mass is falling outside the base of support, you'll be falling or creating momentum to whichever direction that you're falling towards, unless you can recover and now get the center of mass above the base of support again. Without going too technical, normally, traditionally, we have one of three strategies that we can do to recover from a fall. So the first one is the anchor strategy, followed by the hip strategy. These two strategies, it is the most common way of scientific research on how people can prevent falls through muscle action and displacements of our center of mass. However, the anchor strategy as well as the hip strategy, it is often limited because, as you can see from the graph, right, essentially the feet of this stick man is not moving, and then for the anchor strategy, the person is swaying back and forth, and then for the hip strategy, the person is just using his hips to go forward and back to bring his center of mass back. Now, unless you are Michael Jackson, if you all know Michael Jackson and how he liked to perform his very famous dance where he leaned forward, most of us, we don't really recover from a fall that way. So say, for example, if you want to go for a walk, if your feet is fixed down on the floor, you're not going to go anywhere. So in order for us to be able to walk somewhere, to be able to move, we must utilize the third most common way, which is the step strategy. So one of three things will occur. So first, let me move this. Okay, one of two things will occur. So first, we recover by getting our center of mass back above the base of support, and therefore we are able to stabilize ourselves. Second, obviously, if our center of mass go way outside our base of support, we are gonna fall. So I'd like to share with you guys some interesting research on how traditional balance and strength training does in terms of preventing falls. So a lot of us may think that, oh, in order for me to prevent fall, I must have huge muscle. So the amount of muscles that you have in the body, as important as it is what is more important is how you can use the functional capacity, how your body can make use of the muscles to prevent yourself from falling. So this research, 2011, in SportsMed, mentioned three things that I would like to highlight to you guys. Number one thing, exercise must be able to match real-life conditions in order for it to be effective. So if you look at the highlighted portion, most balance training programs include voluntarily controlled exercise only, which means that most people will anticipate a fall or a change of center of mass and therefore use some exercise and then a muscle to pull ourselves back. But oftentimes the issue in our daily life is when we are falling, it is something that it is sudden, it is something that we do not anticipate. And in order for us to recover from that fall, it is a very subconscious reaction. So this study showed that exercises that does have a lot of perturbation, which means that there's a lot of movement of the body that matches real life condition, it is perhaps better to teach the body how to prevent falls than the traditional exercises where we are anticipating there will be a fall or change of momentum of the body. The number one thing, the second thing is the rapid force production is more relevant for preventing a fall than maximal strength, okay? It's very technical. It simply means is this, how much strength you have, how much maximal strength you have, it is indicative of how much force you can produce. However, the rate of force production, in a sense of how fast you can produce the force, is more important to prevent falls than how much force you can produce. So I want you guys to imagine, so right now, if you guys are gonna go for a fall, and I'm gonna say you're gonna need 2 seconds or 3 seconds for you to produce a maximal amount of force for you to decelerate the falling momentum, it's gonna be too late. And most of us will imagine that the quickness of the step, the quickness of producing the force is going to be a lot more relevant than how much force that I can produce. So in conclusion, based on these studies, right, they are trying to say that there are certain kind of balance training, mainly perturbation-based and multitask, which means that it's going to be task balance training that is multifactorial, that is require multiple systems, that is very subconscious reaction-driven, rather than very traditional balancing exercise where we stand on one leg, is going to be perhaps more important and more relevant to prevent falls. Secondly, traditional approaches that talk about resistance training, which means that you go to the gym and carry some weights, right, may not be as important as how much force you can produce, which means that if you want to do resistance training, you're going to make sure that you can produce a high amount of force at the fastest rate possible so that you can decelerate a momentum. Now, there are several risk factors to fall. Number one thing is deficit in postural control, which means that our body is unable to have a good posture. We have a lot of sway. Our center of mass is moving in and out of our base of support. Second, we got reduced muscle strength and power, which we spoke about before. Thirdly, we got impaired balance, which means that a lot of times we are unable to sense ourselves in space and stabilize so that we can prevent ourselves from falling or to decelerate already falling momentum. Fourthly, we got a poor reaction time. We don't react fast enough for us to prevent the fall. Reduced mobility, which means that our joint and our muscles don't have sufficient range of motion for us to elicit the proper functional biomechanics for us to prevent or to stop falling. Lastly, neuromuscular and cognitive function, which simply means how our brain and muscles work together to prevent falls. Now, if you guys look at this 6, and obviously not exhaustive list of factors for fall, we realize that in order for us to make sure our body is functional enough to prevent falls, we're going to address multiple concerns. So in order for us to address multiple concerns and factors, we need multiple solutions. Now, number one thing for deficit in postural control, we're going to make sure that we have sufficient balance training so that we can now maintain our body above the base of support. Secondly, we're going to do resistance training to make sure that our muscles have the strength and power. Thirdly, we're going to do stability training. Now, stability training and balance training, they are both very, very different things. Stability, balance training simply means that how our body is managing itself without movement. And stability training, on the other end, is how our body is managing itself when it's moving. Okay, and then fourthly, for reaction time, of course, we're going to have reaction training. for mobility, we're going to have flexibility and mobility to make sure that the joints and the body is able to perform the function that is required. And lastly, for neuromuscular and cognitive function, we're going to have multi-component training. Simply means a training that brings in different elements of other factors of the functional ability of the body. Now, a lot of people always ask me when it comes to balance training, it's this. We have so many things for us to focus on. Are we going to say we're going to spend 1 hour each day on each factors, which is going to take up most of the days in a week, so that I can perform, I can train all these multiple factors for us to be strong enough to prevent the falls? Not true. The most important thing is we're going to make sure that our training on itself address all these 6 different factors and many more by understanding what we call the SAID principle, the specific adaptation to imposed demands, which simply means if you want to learn how to prevent the fall, you're going to learn how to fall and prevent the fall, and not do any other exercises that has no relevance towards a forward falling for momentum of the human body in the context of walking. So we want to understand how can we use functional training for fall prevention. So before we start, we want to understand what is functional training. Functional training has a lot of times been a buzzword in the health and fitness industry, in a sense that many different kind of come circus and balancing on the ball, balancing on one leg, jumping from one way to the other, and call them functional training. The truth is, functional training, it is any kind of training that directly or indirectly improve the ability of our body to perform a particular task. So the greater the carryover of an exercise improvement to the task, the more functional the exercise is. And for the purpose of fall prevention, we're going to make sure that our functional training we have all 4 elements. First, this functional training exercise must have an element of stability and balance, which means that the training that we do must be able to displace our body or move our body outside our stable ground, outside our base of support, and be able to recover from that movement of the body. Which means that if you were to do exercises where your feet is down on the floor, or when you're lying down on the back and going through maybe up and down motion and forward and back motion, it is insufficient to teach the body how to regain stability and balance in when we are preventing falls. Second, we have strength and power. We're going to make sure that our body has the ability to decelerate momentum and accelerate to bring us back to balance. Thirdly, we have the training must have coordination and reaction, which means that we're going to allow the body to work together. We all got to understand that body don't work independent of each other. Your ankles, your hips, your spine, your head, everything, your eyes, your ears work together in synergy to perform a action. So we're going to do a training that coordinates the whole of the body so that they can react together subconsciously, so that we can prevent the fall when it happens. And lastly, which is oftentimes one of the most neglected factors of functional training, it has to be multi-directional. We human beings, when we function, we perform our function in all 3D space, which means that we go forward and back, side to side, and rotational. Okay, so it is important for us to now understand how can we now, first of all, train the body to be able to move in multiple planes of motion and to be able to decelerate different angles of force. Okay, a lot of time you don't just fall forward, fall in multi-direction. So in order for you to future-proof or fall-proof your body, you're going to make sure that you train your body in all these maybe less frequent or less normal, less accessible range of motion, so that we are ready when the fall happens. Okay, so this is all the theory part of it. We're gonna go through a couple of exercises